Check. Hey, 1, 2. Yes.
Good afternoon.
Sorry. I know everything in the room.
He was here.
You got my cookie?
No cookies for me.
Good afternoon. I call to order the October 20th, 2021 Orlando Aviation Authority Board meeting. Pastor Roderick Zach has come. Would you please lead the invocation? And thank you for coming.
All right, thank you for the invitation to do the invocation. So let's bow our heads for a moment of prayer. Oh God, thank you for this opportunity. We gather to ministrate, to organize, to cast vision for the Orlando International Airport. Thank you for its rich history. Thank you for this gateway to the City Beautiful, the Orlando and Central Florida. We ask that you would bless each chairperson, the chairperson and the board members of this esteemed body. Thank you for the partnership and the network that it represents, both governmental and corporate interests, as well as our state. We ask that you would please bless their deliberations, allow them to have insight and guidance and wisdom as to how to make this city and this opportunity to enter and to exit this city a fruitful one, a safe one. Thank you for the beauty and really the opulence that this airport represents, one of the most beautiful in the world. Thank you for its expansion and its growth, representing one of the largest airports in this nation. Please continue to go with them. Allow them to be guided in best practices that keeps the folk who flow through these gates safe and secure, and to have a prosperous experience in you. We are mindful with COVID-19 and still dealing with that and with various terrorist activities. We just ask that you would protect this place and allow it to be secure and safe, and bless each of the 20+ thousand employees, and allow this to be, again, an experience that's blessed, that's guided by you, and allow, again, them to do their due diligence in administrating their work. Thank you for your blessings. Thank you for your guidance. Thank you for your love, and allow peace and strength and triumph to occur. In your name we pray, and the people of God said, amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Pastor Zach. Dr. Evans, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Farmer, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Good,
I'm here.
Mayor Dyer,
Here.
Mayor Deming,
Here.
Dr. Evans,
Here.
Mr. Mateer,
Here.
Mr. Weishire,
Here.
Mrs. Kirkgard.
Present.
We have a quorum present, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Before we proceed with the agenda, I'd like to remind the public that individuals who wish to speak on an item being considered on the agenda must fill out a speaker request card. Speakers on an agenda item will be allowed 2 minutes to provide their comments. Mr. Gerber?
With regard to today's agenda, please state if you have any conflicts of interest to disclose, whether to your knowledge any person has violated the Aviation Authority's lobbying activities policy for any agenda item, and whether to your knowledge any person has communicated with you contrary to Florida Sunshine Law with respect to today's meeting. Affirmative signs only. Seeing none, we can proceed, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. First item on the agenda is the approval of the board minutes for August 18th, 2021.
I move to approve.
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Mr. Brown, do we have some service recognitions?
Yes, sir.
Thank
We have with us Chief Williamson and Mr. Draper to recognize Kilburn Taylor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, mayors, members of the board. It's my pleasure today to present to you firefighter paramedic Kilburn Taylor, or KT as he's commonly called around the fire station, for his recognition of 20 years of service with the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority. Firefighter Taylor came to us from across the pond in the United Kingdom, but more recently from the Maitland Fire Department. He holds the distinction of senior firefighter in the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority's Aircraft Rescue and Firefighting Team, as it is commonly known. He lends his expertise and his knowledge on many of the department's committees and is a founding member of the ARF Honor Guard. A fan of football, proper football that is, but he says he's not a hooligan, and also a loyal Florida State and Miami Dolphins fan. And when he's not on duty at the fire department, he loves to travel with his lovely wife. When you ask KT's coworkers about him, they're quick to say that he is quick-witted, enjoys a good laugh, is dedicated to his profession, and above all, loyal friend. So please join me in congratulating firefighter Kilburn Taylor for 20 years of service with the Aviation Authority. I'd like to say a couple words. Okay. We'll get some photos.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
We all have the obligatory recognition award, so if you want to hear around, Chief. Sir. You get punished by this.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
But whatever. Well, thank you. We'll move on. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have another service recognition one, but this one probably is one that you won't see very often. Last month, with some reluctance, I received a resignation letter from David Constant. David Constant has served as the chairman of the Airport Noise and Aviation Abatement Committee for 43 years. The ANAC, as it's known, is a function of an interlocal agreement between Orange County and the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority that was established in 1978 in anticipation of some challenges with noise that people in the impacted areas around this airport, and this airport wasn't built because we didn't open it up until 1981, but there were concerns about noise. Those of you who've been here for a while, Mr. Mateer, Mayor Dye, probably remember ROAR and Radar. Those were groups that were formed of citizens that were opposed to the development of an airport, even though we'd had an Air Force base here since World War II. At any rate, what happened with this interlocal agreement, we formed a committee that was made up of citizen representatives for all areas within Orange County. And eventually Osceola County was added in because Osceola was impacted, particularly when we were departing to the south or arriving from the south. So I don't know of any service longer than Dave Constance. He has been the only chairman that ANAC has had. And if health hadn't shown its vulnerability to him, he probably would continue to serve. So I'd like to, with your indulgence, read the resolution that we have for Dave to recognize his service. But there's also a collage that we've put together that will be passed down for each of you to sign. On the collage at the center is a picture of David, but there are at least 7 or 8 executive directors, because he has served, I think, with every executive director that the Aviation Authority has ever had. So some you may not ever recognize on that, but because it goes back 43 years. But with your indulgence, I'd like to read the resolution. Whereas the operation of airports in proximity to residential areas can present sound challenges for both residents and the airport, requiring conscientious and tolerant individuals to mediate resulting complaints. And whereas David Constant, a citizen of outstanding character, heeded the call of his community, embarked upon nearly a half-century mission to reconcile airport noise abatement issues. And whereas the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority, in collaboration with Orange County, established the Aviation Noise Abatement Committee, the ANAC, as a volunteer citizen committee to review those noise complaints and recommend changes to aircraft operations to reduce aircraft noise in 1978, and appointed David Constant to serve as chairman. And whereas Mr. Constant has served as chairman for 43 years and has actively engaged to educate the Central Florida community on noise abatement procedures and mediate aircraft noise issues as an advocate for the citizens of Central Florida. And whereas David Constant's dedication to professionalism and civility should serve as an example to all those who may find themselves in the midst of controversy, now therefore be it resolved that this resolution be presented to David Constant in recognition of his steady leadership and ability to foster respectful discourse on a contentious topic, and that a copy of this resolution be retained permanently in the records of the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority as a testament to his commitment to ANAC, the aviation community, and the welfare of the general public. So David couldn't make it today. We've asked him to stream live, and we will make a presentation to him and his wonderful wife, Izzy, who has stood by his side and accompanied him. And not only has he volunteered for ANAC, but he has volunteered for a number of years for Give Kids the World and a number of other charities throughout this Central Florida community, and is somebody that all of us should look up to. And with that, I would pass to you, Mr. Chairman, the resolution for you to sign. And please take a moment, if you would, and sign the collage for Mr. Constant.
Where's the collage?
I think Mr. Farmer's going to pass it down while you take care of business.
That's great.
Fantastic.
Well, if he's watching, how about a round of
Yeah, there we go.
So while you're doing that, I think probably if we could have Reverend Zach, if y'all want to be in a photo with Reverend Zach before he has to go on other business.
Yeah, let's take a couple minutes here. I think Reverend Zach would like a picture with the board. Let me just put it this way. We would like our picture with you.
Yes, yes.
So I think probably the easiest way is for everybody to come around front. So Dr. Evans, if you'll lead the way around front here.
Yep.
Yes. So we get the.
Yeah.
That's all.
Can we take the mask off for a second while we take the picture?
No, go ahead.
One, two, three. One, two, three.
Someone's eyes were closed.
What's going on the fridge?
Why don't you get one between the two mayors? We'll have the big shot.
There you go. I know, that's stealing cookies.
Look, what is that?
What's that? I'm traveling in just a few minutes, in an hour.
I wonder whether we should have a new uniform of us all wearing like Tommy Bahama shirts at the Orlando Airport.
No, I'm headed to South Dakota to do a little visit hunting, so I didn't want to bring a suit along.
Good. Where are you going to? I just got back from Charleston. We went to Dorchester.
Somewhere outside of Pierre.
Here. Good. The Big Birds Fly Fest. Okay, we are back to the consent agenda. Do we have any speakers for any consent agenda item?
No, sir.
No, we do not. Do any board members wish to consider any items separately? Is there a
And
motion?
there's a
correction.
There's a correction on,
Item E,
Item E?
yeah, there's, on the dais in front of you, there's a two-page memo. There was one of the funding sources on the fiscal impact section of this acceptance of the FDOT grant that we needed to include in there.
So everybody just take a minute and read it.
So we recommend approval of item E as amended in conjunction on the consent agenda.
Okay, I'll need such a motion.
So,
I would move approval of the consent agenda, including the updated item E.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, Mr. Brown, would you like to talk about procurements?
Two procurements are on the agenda for notification to you. No action is required. The first is the ground transportation concession. There is an item that you will consider in new business H that Ms. Rodriguez will go into more detail, but we have issued a request for proposals for ground transportation services. This is an anticipation and acknowledgement that Disney Magical Express will be winding down by the end of the calendar year, so the nature of our ground transportation concession will change pretty significantly because of that. But we need to have ground transportation services available to the general public for both on an on-demand basis, which most of the other services we have are prearranged. So would recognize that. That is on the street, so the no contact is in effect for that. And then the other is a letters of interest for design for 3 taxiways at Orlando Executive Airport. Again, these are for your information. I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have on the issues.
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Would you like to proceed with the Chief Executive Officer's report?
Yes, sir. We have provided to you a Chief Executive Officer's report. A couple of points that I would like to make. In passing, I know there has been a lot of discussion about the weekend before last when there were a number of cancellations. Mayor Dyer and Chairman Good, you both were at the meeting we had with Executive Chairman Gary Kelly of Southwest, who gave his perspective on those. We did suffer some cancellations. About 29% of the flights that Southwest had were canceled. There were a combination of factors. Some of it was weather, some of it was operational with the Jacksonville Center that's responsible for managing air traffic once it gets airborne. But we've seen, I think, the recovery from Southwest, and hopefully we will not see any of these in the future. I think in relation to the discussion, Mr. Kelly said that Florida was important, and I believe he said about half of their flights touch Florida in some form or fashion. Yeah. So Florida is an important state to Southwest Airlines. The other thing I'd like to make note of, it's back in the section of going forward on seat capacity. Just to note that Miami International Airport has added a number of airlines to its service portfolio. Southwest, JetBlue, Spirit, and Frontier are four that have added service at Miami International. And with that additional service, it appears that in the month of November, MIA will overtake MCO in terms of available seat capacity. What that means in terms of passengers is a function of the load factors, but particularly the ultra low-cost carriers, Frontier and Spirit, will drive fairly high load factors. So it's entirely possible that Miami will pass MCO as the busiest airport in November and December. Having said that, one of the topics of interest for the entire nation, but particularly for Central Florida, is the announcement last week by the president that he's going to lift restrictions on international service. For what that means for us is that we will be able to welcome back our British cousins that want to fly over here. The restrictions limited passengers from the UK to essential business or U.S. citizens. Now tourism, those who want to come for a visit can come over. There will be, in our estimation, a ramp up similar to what you've seen with the cruise industry in terms of identifying vaccinations, COVID tests, those things. That's going to be the responsibility of the air carriers. CDC on the 25th this month is supposed to issue some guidance on what they're going to accept in terms of vaccines. The early version of that seems to indicate that they'll accept any emergency use vaccines authorized by the World Health Organizations, in addition to those that are already authorized by the FDA here in the United States. So Johnson & Johnson, COVID, Pfizer will be eligible vaccines, as will some of the Chinese vaccines and AstraZeneca. That has the potential to, I think, increase the opportunity, but there will still be some processing that has to be accompanied. Airlines will have to staff up for that. So the latest information that we have is that Virgin Atlantic will resume service at Orlando International on November 8th. British Airways will resume service on November 15th. Azul, which is a Brazilian carrier, because this not only affects the UK and the EU, but South America and Brazil, is scheduled to resume service on December 1st. So we should start to see some increase in our international service. But again, I think the expectation is going to take a while to ramp up, and there are going to be some bumps along the way in terms of processing of passengers by the airlines and making sure that all the issues, the regulations are complied with. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Oh, one other thing, because I know all of you have some interest. We have now defeased all of our bonds and gotten reimbursement from FAA for all but one tranche, which is imminent for the defeasance of the bonds.
Good work. Well, all that is good news, except getting surpassed by Miami. A lot of that, yeah, I mean, one of the reasons we have a great town is companies move here because they can get to lots of places and travel. But a lot of that, right, has to do with the fact that Miami hasn't been allowed to do international travel, and we've not. So this is a big deal for us to be able to be opened up to international traffic. Hopefully it'll rebound fast. Mr. Brown, new business items?
Yes, sir. The first 5 items are going to be presented by Brad Friel, who's chairman of the Concessions Procurement Committee and also the Director of Planning and Development.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, mayors, members of the board.
Afternoon, Brad.
It's my pleasure to be reviewing with you new business items A through E today. So new business item A is a recommendation of our construction committee to approve engineering services for airport payment maintenance systems at Orlando International Airport. An airport payment management system is a mandatory requirement of the Federal Aviation Administration that requires airports to complete an inventory and condition assessment of its airfield payment every 5 years. The information used by the airport and the FAA the information is used by the airport and the FAA to prioritize grant funding for airfield improvements. Oops, one too fast. So the Small Business Department did not establish any participation goals for this item. And again, it was identified as a specialized scope of services. The fiscal impact is a not to exceed amount of $348,521. And the recommendation is on the screen before you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next item.
Moving on to new business item B is also a recommendation of the construction committee to approve engineering services for W00428 Stormwater Drainage Atlas update at Orlando International Airport. This is an update to MCO's existing drainage atlas and will reflect current and, to the extent possible, future conditions of the drainage system for the entire MCO campus. This effort will involve the physical survey of all the relevant drainage structures, an update of MCO's master stormwater model, and considerable coordination with the South Florida Water Management District. The authority has established a 16% small business participation goal for this item. However, Kimley Horn has proposed to exceed this goal with a proposed 22% MWBE participation goal, or participation. The fiscal impact for this item is $474,208, and the recommended action is on the screen before you. Be happy to answer any questions.
Motion to approve, Chairman.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
Moving on to new business item C, which is a recommendation of the Concessions Procurement Committee to award invitation for bid 02-22. It's carpet, vinyl, and rubber flooring repair and replacement services to Designers West Interiors, Inc. This item is for the replacement repair of existing carpet, as well as installation of new carpet and flooring throughout the airport complex. As you'll notice, the authority received 3 bids for this item, with Designers West being the lowest bid. This is a 36-month contract with 2 one-year renewal options. Under small business, the Small Business Department did not establish any participation goals. However, Designers West Interior is a certified MWBE and LDBE firm. This is a 3-year contract with the fiscal impact being a not-to-exceed amount of $1,154,685, and the recommended action is on the screen before you.
Do I have a motion?
Answer any questions.
Move. Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Next item.
Moving on to new business item D, which is a recommendation of the Concessions Procurement Committee to award invitation for bid 13-22, fire alarm system testing, certification, and repair to Convergent Technologies, LLC. This contract requires Convergent to perform all fire alarm and mass notification system testing, maintenance, and certification at Orlando International. You'll notice the authority received 2 bids for this item, and this contract, if awarded, would be a 36-month contract with 2 one-year options for renewal. The contract did not include any small participation goals, and the 3-year fiscal impact is $1,602,480. And the recommendation, again, is on the screen before you. Be happy to answer any questions.
Motion to approve,
Move
Chairman.
to approve.
Moved and seconded. All those in
Second.
favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
And moving on to new business item E, which is a recommendation of the Concessions Procurement Committee to approve amendment number 3, a 5-year extension for purchasing sole source contract 11-12 public address system with Innovative Electronic Design Support Services, LLC, doing business as IED On Call. This sole source contract requires IED to provide extended hardware and software warranty, maintenance, and repair for the terminal's public address system, which requires the use of a proprietary software and hardware that was developed by IED On Call. No other source is available. This is a 5-year contract, and due to the proprietary nature of these services, the Small Business Department did not establish any participation goals. The 5-year fiscal impact is a not-to-exceed amount of $350,490, and the recommended action is before you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any motion?
Motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. Motion passes. Thank you.
Paul?
Mr. Chairman, next up is Chief of Operations Draper to recommend an amendment to the second and final renewal option for ABM parking facilities.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman, mayors, members of the board. This item is a request from the Concessions Procurement Committee to approve amendment number 2, the second and final renewal option of purchasing contract 0318 operation and management parking facilities with ABM Aviation Incorporated. Under the GOA purchasing contract number 3-18, ABM Aviation Incorporated provides all the operations and management services of the authority's designated parking facilities. So the term of the contract was for 36 months. It became effective February the 1st, 2018, and the initial cost was $18,746,958. With the authority having options to renew the contract for 2 additional periods of 1 year each. The first renewal option we're in now expires January the 31st, 2022. Under the issues, if you notice, the first renewal option was the 5.734770, and the second option is $6,471,500. The difference is that under the first year option, we were in COVID, so we had decreased some of the staff and some of the cost just because of the garage not being busy at the time. The new number for the second year option is consistent with the base year 3 of the contract. So the contract includes an Airport Concessions Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, or ACDBE, participation goal of 35%, which the Small Business Department certifies that this contract is in good standing as it relates to the participation requirement. And again, the fiscal impact for this second and final renewal is $6,471,500, with the funding coming from current and subsequent fiscal year allocated from the Operations and Maintenance Fund. It is respectfully requested the Aviation Authority Board resolve to approve the Concessions Procurement Committee's recommendation as listed, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, the ayes have it. Motion passes.
Next item, Mr. Chairman, Pete Pelletier, Director of Information Technology, will make the presentation.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, mayors, members of the board. New business, item G is a recommendation of the Concessions Procurement Committee for an information technology purchase. A number of our HP servers that support our VMware virtual computing environment are at their support end of life and need to be replaced. The RFQ identified here was distributed only to HP authorized resellers listed in the state of Florida contract, 25 of those in total. The authority received 2 responses as listed from High Performance Technologies and Insight Public Sector. Small Business Department has determined that due to the lack of ready, willing, and able certified small businesses for these items, this procurement does not lend itself to any participation requirements. And the fiscal impact of the proposed High Performance Technologies quotation is $337,999.20, and funding is available from the previously approved capital expenditure funds. And the recommended action is before you, and be happy to answer any questions.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Rodriguez, the Chief Administrative Officer, will make the presentations for items H and I.
Good afternoon. I'm here to present new business item H, recommendation to approve the amendment to the ground transportation concessions with Mears. Mears is our current ground transportation concessionaire. The Mears agreement expires on October 31st. It does contain an option for it contains two options for 1 year each. Disney has announced the sunset of its Magical Express transportation service, as Mr. Brown announced in his CEO report, and that should wind up sometime in mid-January. The Aviation Authority has initiated a request for proposals for a new resort ground transportation concession, which is anticipated to be awarded mid-January as well. Staff has determined that the ground transportation service is extremely important, and so is the management of the commercial curb, especially during the upcoming holiday season. So it proposes to exercise the first renewal option for 1 year with the ability to terminate within 30 days notice by the Aviation Authority. The contract includes a small business participation goal of 10%, which it is currently in good standing with. Mears will continue to pay the greater of 10% of its gross receipts or its minimum annual concession fee under its agreement. The recommended action is before you on the screen, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And it passes. Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez.
Okay, new business item I is a recommendation to approve supplemental in-terminal relief resolutions for duty-free, duty-paid, as well as the spa service concessionaires. The Aviation Authority Board has adopted several relief programs for in-terminal concessionaires. International traffic is still limited, and as, again, Mr. Brown announced in a CEO report, the airlines are still determining what type of regulations and rules there are going to be for international flights when they do return to the airport, and as well as the federal government is trying to figure out those rules as well. And so, duty-free is dependent on international traffic. Duty-free is still down approximately 85% 2019 versus 2021. The spas in the terminal are still dealing with the effects of COVID. And so staff has determined that relief is warranted for these companies. Staff proposes to extend the most recent relief packages from October 1, 2021 through January 31st, 2022. In order to qualify for the extended relief, the similar provisions to the previous relief packages must be met, but in addition, the concessionaires must be open, obviously. They must pay the greater of 25% of its MAG or the percentage rents due under the respective agreements. Additionally, they must be compliant of their ACDBE regulations and the requirements pursuant to their agreements. The fiscal impact may be as much as the number on the screen. That's assuming nothing improves. The Aviation Authority would still receive the contractual percentage rents in the event, obviously, conditions improve and international flights come back and everything comes back to normal. The recommended action is before you on the screen, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
My understanding is that they need to be open.
That is correct, sir.
So, and this is one of the complaints we've had. We dropped minimum guarantees and tenants don't open. I was at getting on a Silver flight a couple days ago, and Starbucks was open. La Madeleine was not open at 7 o'clock. There were lines backed up everywhere for Starbucks and for Wendy's to get coffee. People were just not even going, and so I would like them to be open. And I understand the challenge for both those businesses. But I look at the other massage places and around our Massage MV, Hand and Stone, and they're telling me they're doing a booming business. I can get people not being comfortable in a massage, but these places seem to be open. And I think they're open in other airports.
Most certainly understand, and obviously we will continue to monitor them, and they will not be eligible for this relief if they are not open.
Okay? Good.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be happy with the last page. New business item J is a recommendation for an airport concession disadvantaged business enterprise grant fund. We brought this to you last month. You authorized $2 million for us to potentially award to eligible grantees. Let me just step back a minute and talk about why we're doing this and why we're targeting ACDBEs. ACDBE occupies a long history in the aviation business. It's been recognized for a number of years. We have a corollary in our MWBE program that focuses on those socially and economically disadvantaged individuals that start businesses. During the COVID pandemic, the small businesses have suffered. Small business, as most of you have seen over the 40 years or so in Central Florida, have been the backbone of the economy. And so we think it's reasonable and appropriate to try and target relief for those firms that are small businesses that we've invited to participate because we require participation by ACDBs in our concessions. The challenge is always going to be balancing the interest of the authority and safeguarding our assets and making sure that there is appropriate targeted relief. Over the course of the last 18 months, we have had a number of conversations with concessionaires, and to your point earlier, Mr. Chairman, we continue to have because they're not all open. And so we have embarked on a program where we're monitoring day and night who's open and who's not. Because we've reached the point with the concessions in general, if you're not open, there are contractual obligations that you have in the concessions agreement that we may have to exercise our contractual rights. And so we're preparing to make that case.
We should.
But with regard to this relief program, the bulk of our ACDBs are in joint ventures with majority-owned companies. And what we've seen in the relief that we've offered up to this point to concessionaires, that because of the nature of some of the operating agreements, it's been difficult for that relief to flow down to the minority partner. So having said that, we were trying to look at ways that we could target the ACDBEs, provide them specific relief, but at the same time, I said, safeguard the authority's assets to make sure that, number one, the grantees are accountable and that the relief is warranted. So with that, the eligibility and award criteria that we've developed, we'll look at the notion of a significant reduction. And the way that we propose to evaluate that is look at that period of time starting in April of 2020 through March of 2021. If you remember last month, I showed you a number of charts that had the, I guess, lack of a better term, the Nike swoosh, because they dropped off real quick and then they started to climb back. That was basically over a year's time in April of 20 through March of 21. That is the period we're looking at, and what we propose to do is compare that to a similar period pre-COVID. So a significant reduction, in our view, would be 50% or larger reduction in gross receipts. So that would be one criteria for eligibility. The other is you have to be an ACDBE. Not only do you have to have the certificate, but you have to be currently eligible to be an ACDBE. Why we make that distinction is that you can serve as an ACDBE under a concession contract even though you exceed the requirements, particularly the size and net worth, personal net worth, that are requirements of qualifying as ACDBE. So we want to make sure that it is currently eligible ACDBEs that receive this relief. How are we going to look at what the amount of the award is? In all of our discussions with a number of concessionaires, but particularly with the ACDBEs, one of the challenges, having made a capital contribution, and each ACDBE to qualify has to make a capital contribution. If it's a sub-concessionaire, they have to make the total capital contribution for their concession. If it's a joint venture, they have to make a pro rata. So if you're a 30% partner, you have to make 30% of the capital contribution. That comes in the form of usually two sources of funds, a loan and your own resources. Many ACDBEs don't have the resources, so they have loans that they take from their majority partner. That's permitted as long as it's on commercially acceptable terms. Some have the ability to borrow on their own. But over the course of this pandemic, many have had difficulty in amortizing not only the loan payment, but getting a return on their investment. So what we've looked at as a way of measuring what the award should be is, as an example, if you're an ACDBE, you have $500,000 that you've contributed, and it's a 5-year concession term, then your annual amount on a straight line basis is $100,000. What we would propose is that we would provide relief up to 75% of that year's of capital investment. So in the example I gave you, it would be $75,000. So that would be on a reimbursable basis, meaning that the expenses, and we have a number of expenses, payroll, supplies, those kinds of things, because we think it's important that they continue to operate and make investment in their concession at Orlando International Airport. Now, some of these providers, concessionaires, have other operations elsewhere. So we have asked for a lot of information in our application. We want to make sure that the money that we provide for relief is targeted for the benefit of concessions at Orlando International Airport. So this application has a lot of information. I'm not going through all that, but there's going to be a lot of information requested from the ACDBEs. But in order for us to make sure that everyone's accountable and that we are providing targeted relief, we're going to ask for this information. It's going to be reviewed by an independent CPA firm that is a local developing business that we have under contract now, that is very familiar with concessions at the airport, has audited a number of them. The agreement, and the purpose of the agreement is to reimburse eligible expenses. I've already gone through what we're going to be looking at as eligible expenses for the period beginning October 1st, which was this past October 1st, through September 30th of 2022. So over the next year, we're going to reimburse expenses that ACDBEs have made into their concession at the airport, up to the maximum amount under the eligibility. We have inspection rights, audit rights on 15 days notice. These will not be assignable by the ACDBEs. If there's a default on the breach of the covenants, then we have remedies. The most direct remedy is repayment of the dispersed funds, but we have other options in terms and with the debarment, potential debarment from future concessions if that becomes necessary. So the grant program management will include Small Business Development Department, executive management, legal counsel, the LDB accounting firm that we've contracted with. All the non-staff costs, legal and the accounting firm, will be compensated out of the $2 million that you've authorized up to this point. So we have the fiscal impact and the recommended action, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Once the completed application is received, how long will it take for the reimbursement to occur?
There'll be a payment request form, so once the application, they're determined eligible, then it's a matter of how long they take to fill out and it'll be a one-page form, and we work through that. But essentially, it works the same way that we have to deal with FAA on the grants that we have. You put together an application form, you submit it, it gets reviewed by the LDB accounting firm. If there's any questions, we'll go back and ask, but once we've done that, it'll go into the process and get paid under the payment provisions of the statute.
I certainly can support it because I feel like as a community, we've come a long way to try to be inclusive here at the airport to make sure that our ACDBs are coming along and participating in the great economic opportunities that we have here at the airport. And this global pandemic has certainly impacted many of them, perhaps more than the larger businesses here. And feel like if we don't want to step backwards in time to where we were when there was little minority and ACDB participation here, we kind of responsibly have to do these types of things. And I know with my conversation with you, you have said that fiscally, we can do this. So I wholeheartedly support the effort that you have recommended.
How many companies do you think will be eligible for these grants?
It's hard to determine eligibility. The universe that we have right now are 24 ACDB firms. And this is, again, we have other firms that are DBEs, but this is for in-terminal concessions.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Move approval.
Move approval. Seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
The motion passes. I want to add something regarding La Madeleine while we're on it. Since I got on this board, because I do own part of La Madeleine franchise in Houston and Dallas, I've been complaining about that route. Ms. McKinnon, would you please tell your client that this is, I understand it is host. I could be wrong about that, but I think I've been told it was. Is it host?
It's host. It's a food court over on Airside 1, which is host operation.
So we rely on the revenue from this airport, from the percentage rent, and also our customers that come through this airport need the most excellent experience we can get. There's a long line of people trying to get these concessions. There's people in this town that would love to have that spot to run their business out of, and they can go weeks with no coffee. The coffee is often stale. The cupboard is usually half empty. The egg and cheese croissant is right straight from Burger King's commissary. And I would like by the next, if it is your client, by the next meeting, we're going to have people shop at, and these other stores. We really rely on everybody here to do the greatest job possible in customer service. And if they can't do it, then there are other people that I think could do an excellent job, whether it's a Foxtail type or whether it's other operators. And I know you don't think it's yours, and Phil says it is, but whoever's it is. And that really goes for all the concessions. We need people doing it. We are happy. We've given concessions. We're happy to give these concessions. And by the way, some of these minority businesses work absolutely the hardest. So we want to work with our partners, but all of us need to put the full down and go into this next year.
Well, and Host is open. Having traveled recently, their concessions are open at other airports, like fully open. So it's just odd that ours wouldn't be, understanding that we're as busy as we are.
Yeah, I'd like to add, I think I've brought this up every meeting that I've attended. And they do not take us seriously, and that's the board's responsibility. And the fact that we have not acted yet is our fault, not theirs at this point. And I think it's time for us to step forward and deal with this issue, because it's wrong and it's going to harm the airport.
And it harms the experience. If somebody gets off the airplane and wants a cup of coffee, or gets there an hour early and looks at massive lines and La Madeleine, which is normally a really nice experience, or whatever else it
Or
is.
Cinnabon.
We want this
Or
experience.
Cinnabon.
Huh?
Or Cinnabon.
They're not listening. They were supposed to be open September 1st. They weren't. They go through all this, that. Like I said, we've been talking about this for every meeting. It's time to take a step forward and deal with it.
And that means all hours.
So, being the new board member, I mean, Mr. Attorney, what kind of recourses do we have?
And if somebody has a good reason for an exception, and I get it for the duty-free, and I get it for then let's deal with that. But,
They have standards of service and hours of operation. We can give them a breach notice.
I'll just briefly
That
say,
sound like a motion?
yeah,
I don't think it needs a motion. I think,
I'll move to give them a breach notice.
okay, we have a motion.
Second?
Okay, let me add, I will respect the motion as what the board has commanded. It's not official action because it's not noticed on the agenda. However, I understand.
Again, we don't want to be hard if there's good reasons, but. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is another scintillating topic, the compliance with HB 915. I've talked to you individually, and we've talked about this in the past. October 1st, 2020, there was a change in Florida statutes that became effective that applied to commercial service airports. It required posting specified information on the website of the airport, most notably contractual information, and it had to be posted within 7 days of the contract approval. That proved to be a daunting, as you can imagine, we have a lot of contracts. You look at them all the time. The ones that you approve are the large ones, but all contracts have to be posted. Any contract or award that's over $325,000 has to be a separate line item on the agenda. Purchase of goods or services over $65,000 have to follow the guidance for competitive procurements in Chapter 287, unless they are subject to certain exemptions allowed in 287. And I'm happy to report that beginning January 1st, 2021, and we are in compliance, each governing board member had to complete 4 hours of ethics training. So all of you have completed it. The mayors have additional requirements, and they have completed theirs, so this entire board, as well as all the personnel that file financial disclosures in Form 1 that work for the authority, have completed their ethics training. We have to submit this information. There is a website that has been developed by the Florida Department of Transportation, and we have to certify compliance. So the purpose today is to go through the issues that we have been working on, the utilization of the web portal that the Florida Department of Transportation has developed, to submit a checklist for the airport transparency and accountability reporting compliance. That has to be submitted by November 1. Our target is to submit that prior to November 1st. The compliance is with parts of Florida Chapter 112 with the ethics and public records, Chapter 287 on procurement, and 332.0075, which deals with some particular provisions on reporting and attestation on behalf of the Aviation Authority. We are also subject to audit every 7 years by the Florida Auditor General. We have one audit, which was an operational audit conducted by him prior to the implementation of the statute. We expect that we will have a follow-up next year at some point in time. As we reported several months ago, and actually it's been more than a year because the audit's been completed over a year. It just hadn't been submitted to the Joint Legislative Audit Committee. There were 4 minor issues that the Auditor General found. But we will, again, along with the other commercial service airports, be subject to audit for both an operational and a financial audit which is somewhat duplicative only because we already have financial audits that are conducted pursuant to our bond covenants by CPA firms externally. So the issues, we have procured the ethics training, we've developed a compliance matrix, and except for some minor issues of noncompliance, we believe that we're in compliance. Those issues of noncompliance are basically timing on posting of contracts early on in the process. Because the statute has some ambiguity in it, we're trying to determine exactly which contracts or what qualified as having to be posted. So we were delayed in some of those. But again, these are minimal. We have tracked these. The Internal Audit Department, Finance Department, General Counsel's Office, the Chief Administrative Officer, all have been following this in some detail and making sure that we are meeting all the requirements. We have to link some of our information on the website, and then we have to prepare the information and documentation for the Florida Department of Transportation. So the Aviation Authority sanction, if we do not comply with the statute, is that until compliance is demonstrated, FDOT may not expend any funds allocated to the Aviation Authority. Obviously, today you've already accepted a grant for, 2 grants in fact, totaling about $17 million. One of them is for the ground transportation facility corridor. So this sanction would be harmful to the Aviation Authority, so we appreciate your efforts in helping us to comply. We'd like to ask for approval of the recommended action, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
And that concludes new business, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Is that it?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any more? No?
No more.
This is my first meeting with less than 26 new business items. I'm kind of excited.
Put you on a BZA sometime, the mayor will, if you really need a lot of time. Thank you very much. This concludes the meeting.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to make one comment, please.
Yes.
Actually, 2. If you haven't already, I want to implore my colleagues to take a tour out with the runways, spend a few hours with Mr. Draper and Marquez. It was truly
Is
eye-opening.
that Johnny Bravo there?
Truly, Mr. Chairman, please. Truly eye-opening. And there's 2 takeaways I had. Number 1, my sense for the readiness in the event, God, heaven forbid, tragedy strikes. When you spend time with these folks, you get a sense, Tim, of tremendous confidence. These are extremely competent people that take their job very seriously, and I want to acknowledge them. I want to acknowledge Marquez as well for leading it, Mr. Draper. Secondly, I want to point out to the board that I have reinstated a speaker series with the Boys and Girls Club of Central Florida. And we're going to start off in Eatonville. I call it Keeping It Real. And I have a speaker come in and talk to the kids about the one new habit. Socrates said we are the sum of our habits. Talk about the one new habit that can really change a trajectory. So what I envision is I want to see a nice, healthy portal of great people like Carolyn and Marquez coming over, talking to these kids and getting into their narrative about what they can be someday. So if you have any ideas for great speakers, please let me know. And I thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. The meeting is closed. Thank you. And
We have another meeting?